Randy has to get us started.
Hope you have a question, Eddie.
I always have questions. Just generally, what are you looking for out of Saturday?
The 15th practice. Nothing. To be quite honest with you, I think the last couple years, we've tried to play games in front of people. With a young team a year ago, we did it twice, and not really games, just practice. I just think it adds another piece of the puzzle to a young football team, and it's still a really young team as it was a year ago. And I think, you hear me say this all the time, we won't even know what our team's going to look like until September next year, and we'll get out in front of 70,000 people. But I think the opportunity to put people in the stands, and, a year ago we had to go to Ames and some other places because our field was getting redone. And, this year, to be able to do it at home is great because you're in your stadium that you're going to play in. But I just think the dynamic of that, honestly, it'll be another practice. We've always kind of used these open deals is just another practice, but I think, again, putting people in the environment is another phase to evaluating the football team and where you're at and where some individuals are at, quite honestly.
Who's likely to play, not play? Who's not going to play much?
Well, I think we'll get there on Saturday. I think, again, it's another huge evaluation day for us. Some of the guys that have been, limited, obviously Deshaun Hannock has been limited through most of the spring, got back on the practice field, a couple of days ago. Cartavius Norton, won't play, hasn't played much all spring. Isaiah Lee's been limited at times through spring. And again, all those guys from off-season surgery, Jeremiah Cooper. And then we'll evaluate. Again, to me, you're getting this point. We had a huge scrimmage last Saturday, which was really good. We have a really good practice today. And then, continue to use these days as a great evaluation tool. So we'll just continue to evaluate our football team, who needs quality reps, how many reps do we want to get. You probably know a little bit more of that as we get into through today and into Saturday. But, I think you'll see our football team go practice on Saturday and kind of get to watch those for whoever's going to come out and get a chance to watch our football team Saturday.
You talk about these being evaluation days. Where are your evaluations at? Just like, how do you feel about where the team is at this point?
Yeah, I think the thing that's been a positive is, you got so many new pieces in terms of some players and staff. It's been fun to feel the momentum of growth every day. And, I do feel like this group has come back since January and just continued to grow forward every day. And there's a spirit about this team. I don't know what it is or where it's going to go, but, man, there has been purposeful intent in all their actions, and that part I think is really exciting. And you're just, there's a lot of unknowns, and I think those unknowns are going to continue through fall camp and probably continue through the early part of the season until we really continue to see where we're at. But I think growth has been at the forefront, whether it's physical growth, whether it's mental growth, whether it's growth in schemes, or really just growth and continued growth within the mindset of a really young team a year ago that's growing up and using their experiences to grow themselves forward. So it's been really fun to watch. And I think that's when you are young like we are the last year and a half, you can actually visually see the growth happening and occurring, and that part's been really rewarding to watch.
What have you seen from Hunter, Rocco, and JJ throughout the spring?
Yeah, we haven't really done a whole lot on offense. I think we've been really trying to be purposeful on, what's our process? How do we do all the things that, it takes for us to be successful, whether it's how we call a play, how we get to the line of scrimmage, how we work on snap count. And then, I think the growth of simple situational football, how do you understand that? And I think all three of those guys have really handled the how-to really well, and I think they've grown in that aspect of it. And obviously, if we're going to be successful on offense, it starts with their understanding on, how to, prior to the ball being snapped, and then understanding all the situations that come with playing quarterback. And so I really think our staff, Nate's done a great job of kind of starting back at square one and rebuilding it forward. And I really think the quarterbacks, it's been really beneficial for them, because I think they've been able to start back at square one and rebuild themselves forward. So I think all three guys have had really positive moments. All three guys have played really well. And at times guys have, made some mistakes, but have been able to learn from it. So I think it's been positive for all three.
What is the format going to be on Saturday? Is it going to be a scrimmage?
Practice, I think a lot of team reps with some practice starting off beforehand, and then, we'll get some team reps and, drive the football and play. We'll probably, everything's had some competition to it, and, we'll figure out exactly what that competition looks like. But it'll be, the opportunity for us to just get out there and play football a little bit too, driving it, and probably look very similar to what we did last year, a year ago, when we were at Gilbert and Ames.
When you talked about what it's going to be today isn't what it's going to be in the fall, and you don't know, obviously that's not unique or new, but how do you, as a coaching staff, deal with that or communicate it to the team that what it is today shouldn't be what it is in August, and I guess preaching patience throughout that?
Yeah, I think that's, you just try to continue to be honest. I think our kids do understand, every step of the way. We've said, man, we know we're not going to go into spring or finish spring and we're going to have all these positions set. Quite honestly, we'll probably have very few. There may be about 4 or 5 guys that know what position they'll have going into the fall. Other than that, it's going to be wide open. And, I think what's positive about that is, we've been there a lot. I think if you look at our 17 team and our 18 team, and probably even a little bit in 19, there was very similar kind of teams. 20 and 21 were a little bit unique because we were a lot older then. And, I think we're kind of back into that cycle where you're still very young and there's a lot of competition. And I think the positive, as we've told all of our kids, is there is a lot of competition. There are guys that are competing in depth across the board that, man, you better come every day to practice. You better take advantage of the 14th, 13th practice. Tomorrow's the 14th practice, the 15th practice on Saturday. Man, you better learn and grow and be humble enough to say, what did you do really well? Man, where are the areas that you have to grow forward? And then you better get ready for, man, this unbelievable 12 weeks of summer training. And then the next part will be getting ready for fall camp. And then, those 4 weeks will be critical. So I think, and I think you guys that have covered us know this, like, man, we're a developmental team. And every phase of the development going into the season is critical for us to be successful in maximizing that. So, I think our staff's done a great job. We really have tried to be very simple and intentful about what we've installed offensively and defensively, and really try to do a great job of understanding situational football, be really good from the installation standpoint, and let our guys grow holistically through this so we can evaluate what was done, not try to out-scheme ourselves through the spring. So you're evaluating scheme instead of fundamentals and detail, and then be able to give our kids some great feedback post-spring practice to be able to go into the summer and continue our growth process. So I really think our staff has done a great job. I appreciate that, and our kids understand that too.
Hi, Matt. Given as wide open as you just talked about some of the positions being, how excited are you to see what guys do individually in the summer once you get past the spring game, and obviously with Coach Kagi here and his staff working with them?
Yeah, I think, well, the one thing that was really positive to see, and again, this isn't a knock on anything other than just the youth of our team, what we look like in the last game last year to what we physically look like when we stepped on the practice field for spring practice was night and day. So when you compare that with another 12-week block where really the intent, yes, there's football and fundamentals, probably about 20% of it, but the other 80% is the physical development and growth of your team. I think you're really excited about that, and to see, man, what does that football team look like when you step on the field again, come August. So I think the piece is creating great momentum coming out of spring ball, which I would say if we ended today, man, I'd feel really great about it because I think we've done some phenomenal things. But, the piece of it then is how do you then take what we did well, what we didn't do well, and then individually go to work on your craft, whether that's man, I got to get better at my fundamentals. I got to be better in nutrition. I got to get stronger. What are those areas, the gaps that we got to continue to fill in so you can be your best, so ultimately we can be our best? And I think that's what we love. That's what I love about the process of the off season and the journey to become our best team we can become, is trying to individually and collectively give our kids what they need. But yeah, I'm excited. And like I said, I think Reed did a great job. His team did a great job. But I think part of that too is when you're a young team, you can physically see them grow up. And I think you had so many young guys on the roster a year ago, and those young guys got a chance to get a full off season to really continue to grow forward. So I think it's been positive so far.
And just one more from me, Coach. I'll speak for myself. Coach Clanton impressed me with the way he's able to distill how he teaches and why he teaches the things he teaches. Mm-hmm. How, as he continued to put his stamp on that offensive line room as he's settled in to the job?
Yeah, I think, Rob, what Ryan's been able to do and what's been impressive is he is a great teacher, and I've always said coaching is teaching, right? I think sometimes we get skewed in the world of coaching. It's still a form of education and teaching, and great coaches are certainly great teachers, and Ryan has done a really great job of, I think, from him simplifying. Now, to his credit, I really think that offensively there's been how do we be the best communicators and how do we simplify the best way we can, again going back to not what we do, it's how we do what we do, and I think that has been a really positive for that group. I think you see, again, there's a lot of guys that are back playing football, for that group. So I think that's a huge positive. And then there's some really talented young guys that have really flashed. And I think a lot of that has occurred because, we've been able to simplify. I think they're bigger and stronger than they've been, really in a while here. And I think that certainly helped those guys have confidence. And, I think just the holistic approach has given that group some confidence to move itself forward. And again, a lot of room to continue to work too. It'll be a big summer for that group as well, but they've made great growth so far.
Coach, how has Benny, Kai, and Jaden been able to work their way into this offense, into the room, and then how much progression have you seen through the spring with those guys?
Boy, I think the simple thing that I can say about all three of those guys in a collective whole is they're elite talent, and they have elite traits. And, I think one of the things that we, when we've been at our best, we've had skilled players with elite traits that when the game's on the line, they've been able to make the plays. And I'd say all three of those guys have flashed those traits that at some point in this program, they're going to be able to be great difference makers for us. So I'm really excited about all three of those guys. I think all three of those guys fit the mold of, man, the Lazards, the Butlers, the Xavier Hutchisons, big body guys that have great hand-eye coordination, can go make the 50-50 catch, the guys that can make the play in the moment. I think they've all shown great traits of that. So I think Jaden Higgins has been a guy that obviously a little bit more mature than the two freshmen, but man, he's been uber impressive, and I think has come in with those elite trait mindsets from day one. And then, boy, Benny and Kai, two guys that have big physical tools and traits to help our football team. So we're excited about all those guys.
I noticed you had one position move this spring with Anthony Smith moving over to defense. Any other guys you're kind of looking at other spots?
Yeah, not really. A great point. I think, Miles Mendezun is kind of went back and forth a little bit from linebacker to defensive end. Miles is about 245 pounds right now, and Miles is a guy that's been a great special teams player for us, and, has got some twitch and the ability to rush the passer. So, I think he can fluctuate back between the Mike linebacker and the defensive end position, but really that's about it. Obviously, across the board, the O-line, we'll kind of navigate that. I still think that's, until we settle on who are the top guys, where are they at, I think they're all in flux a little bit. But, other than true position movement, I think those are about the only two guys.
You listed earlier the guys who've been limited. Behind those guys on the depth chart, who are some that have taken advantage of like those first team reps, second team reps that have kind of maybe carved out a niche this spring?
I think the offensive line, again, Tyler Miller and Huff, those guys have been limited. I think the reps that a guy like a James Neal has gotten, Fonto has gotten, I think those guys, Dalen Hazard, Brady Peterson, I think all those guys have made significant strides, and obviously being able to get those reps, whether they've been, first string, second string, there are really no strings, it's just quality reps, that those guys have been able to really take great advantage of that, in my opinion. I think the depth at safety, we were, you had Coop out for a while, Bo's been limited at times through spring, just taking care of some things from his standpoint, but a guy like Trey Howard has had a really impressive spring. I think continues to show. I think Trey McGee, Malik Verdone getting back, all those guys, it's been really beneficial. Blake Thompson, some of those guys I think have proven that, their growth has been exponential and maybe be able to help our football team come next fall. So I think those would at least be some names that I would give you, just because, they flash or showed some consistency through the spring that'll be ready to compete in the fall.
AJ Harris is it AJ? What do we call him?
Yep, AJ.
AJ, okay. He didn't play a lot at Stanford, maybe like 2 plays, something like that. What did you see in him?
Well, you got to remember he was a true freshman last year. So, I think for AJ, I think number one, you knew his high school talent. We had recruited him a little bit after he going into his senior year of high school. And I just think you talk about, first thing for him is character. I think the second thing, you saw a guy that's got the ability to, take it the distance. He's got great long speed. He's got the ability to stick his foot in the ground and get vertical. So I think he's been, he's a guy that you saw some of those traits that we look for in the tailback position. And, I think there was certainly knowledge prior to just, his Stanford clips or practice clips or whatever you were able to see from, him in college. You knew who he was, you knew what he stood for, and then you knew what that high school videotape looked like. So I think that was the big thing for us in terms of him.
He's got good genes too, right?
He's got good genes, yes, sir.
Yeah, with his dad.
Yeah, it was a good thing.
Zach Lovett, what can we see from him?
I think Zach's a guy that just continues to grow in the system. I think, again, we recruited Zach. It was that COVID year for Zach, and, we were part of his recruiting process through high school. I just think, again, you're talking about a guy that in a lot of ways is not a true freshman, but it's kind of like a freshman because you're learning a new scheme. You're playing linebacker. I feel like that guy's grown every day in practice, but you see a guy that's got great athletic tools. He can really run. He's physical at the point of attack. Him and Jack Sadowski have probably been 2 wow factors probably for us already in terms of practice so far at the Mike linebacker position. So you're pretty impressed with what those guys have been able to do for us.
Just one more thing for me. Can you talk about the draft next week a little bit? What do you think?
I mean, obviously, continues to be, what I would say is just exciting for our program. I think when you look at it, and I think you guys have covered us enough to not know that it's not just, we're not in the phase where we were 5 years ago where, man, to have a draft pick is important. You're talking about, that's common here now. And then I think the second part of it is on top of all that, you guys have covered these 3 guys that you're like, have transformed right and grown up right before your eyes. You're talking about Anthony Johnson, who was 160 pounds and, came from nothing, and not only got a degree, not only was maybe one of the most influential figures in the history of our program as a leader, is a guy that's going to have a chance to live out his childhood dream next weekend. You talk about Will McDonald, who, again, moves in with his high school football coach his junior year, high school basketball player, really didn't play much football, and has a chance to go be a first-round draft pick in the National Football League, and comes back to school not to set the sack record in the Big 12, but comes back to school to actually get his degree. You talk about Xavier Hutchison, a guy that had to go the JUCO route, went through junior college, and from the day he stepped on our campus, it's been me on repeat talking about how he prepared and how he came to practice every day, and literally did everything in his power to help our football team win games during his time here. And so, I think that's the story. It's great that, man, it's going to happen and great things are going to happen Saturday. But to me, when I think about those guys, I think about who they are and really the growth as young men into men. And, you know, you just couldn't be prouder of what those guys accomplished. We talk about reach your full potential. And you look at those guys, you know, I think Orion's going to have a great opportunity next weekend, whether it's drafted or priority free agent. And, you know, you talk about what that young man became in our program and what he stood for. So you're really proud of those guys. I think you're really grateful that they led here, and you're grateful that with their leadership and them reaching their full potential as individuals, they're going to reap the great benefits of having the opportunity to play at the highest level.
With the obvious caveat, there's a long way to go, and it's just a practice. Everybody in this room and all your fans are going to be spending a lot of time looking at your offense on Saturday. What have you seen through 12 practices or whatever it is that you would point to people to look at and say, this is, you extrapolate this out, this is why we're going to be better?
Yeah, I first of all, hopefully there's enough trust in the results of 7 years of football here to know we'll be just fine. I think the second piece of it, I would tell you, is it's going to be hard to make any. Man, it's going to be about 43 degrees, and we'll see. We're going to keep it pretty simple. And, you know, if you're taking any notes on what happened Saturday, which I get everybody's job and everybody will make it, it'll be pretty hard to realize, you know, nothing Saturday will tell you what will be good or not. But I think what I've seen is I've seen this group really grow in terms of the areas that take no talent to get better. You know, I've seen us really be efficient in terms of execution. You know, we really, you know, the little things. How do you get off on the snap count? How do we do a really good job of, you know, making sure we give the quarterback time to process the play and the formation. And, you know, I think just the how-to has been really, which you're not going to see and you're not going to know and you're not going to be able to sit there and write about. But I think those are the things that when you say, man, if we're going to be better next year on offense and we're going to take a huge step forward, what are the things that we really had to work on? It's the how-to. And I think, you know, Nate, his staff have done a great job of really doing that. And, you know, I think Saturday it'll be, again, another great opportunity for a lot of individuals out there to collectively go out and say, man, where has their growth process been? Man, when you do put fans in the stands and you do put eyes on you, it is different. And I think we all know that 18 to 22-year-olds, and that's why I do like having the opportunity to do that, because I think you can start to see how kids handle, you know, that, and it's just another piece of the puzzle. So it's a great question, and it's a really fair question. To be completely transparent, like, I think you guys know, like, man, what you're going to see on Saturday, it's going to be hard to make any evaluation other than, you know, man, are you continuing to grow forward? And at least I've seen through 12 practices, it's been a great growth of our team, and a lot of credit to our staff.
You mentioned earlier not trying to out-scheme yourself in spring. What's the benefit of that, especially like you mentioned where maybe you are in a development cycle closer to that 17, 18, 19 seasons?
I think sometimes, you know, we as coaches, and believe me, I think this is can be a fault of mine sometimes, because you get so enamored with the X's and O's. And, you know, I think this program has been built on competition a lot, that sometimes you get so competitive that you end up getting through a spring practice and you're like, dang, you know, like, we worried so much about beating the offense or the defense that you actually didn't get anything accomplished because you're trying to beat yourself rather than trying to work on the fundamentals and craft of what's going to allow you to be successful in the fall. And I think that's what's great about, you know, being together with John for so long and having the ability to have great communications. It's really being together with Nate so long, you know, honestly. And, you know, even just from a special team standpoint, like, really looking back, deep dive, what's allowed us to have success, what hasn't, and let's go to work on these things. Let's keep it really simple. Let's help our players evaluate where they're at so we can give them the tools and resources come the summer to be ready for fall camp in the season. And we've really tried to do that. Honestly, we've done it as good as we ever have, you know, since we've been here. It's been really competitive. It's been uber competitive, but it's stayed in the wheelhouse of development in the baseline fundamentals of our offense and defense, and I think it'll really benefit us moving forward.
When did you guys get all out of whack? I mean, as far as you as football coaches as a whole, as far as you were talking about 12-week blocks and how important the summer is going to be. When did that change? Because players used to get some time off, right?
Right. Yeah, I think we got out of whack a long time ago. But, you know, I think the big thing, though, Randy, I mean, honestly, I do think even with the NCAA rules over the course of the last 10 years, it has changed greatly, but I don't think it's so different, even when I was a head coach at Toledo. I mean, you're the key is having some balance, right, and giving your guys some time away, and I think that's really imperative. I think what, at least from my mindset, is you want your kids to be able to, you want them to run to fall camp, right? You want them to be able to run to each phase of the season, and I do think that's tricky. It's a fine line of, man, how much time, effort, and energy do we take from them, and how much balance do we give them to be able to kind of be with their family. And you don't want to sit there and try to practice through the summer. I think you just want to have the ability to make sure it's a fine line, because you still physical growth and development of, 18 to 22-year-olds have got to be at the forefront. Number two, the mentality to sprint to fall camp. You want your kids to be fresh and going into fall camp and ready to go for the season. And when you start in fall camp, through the season, that's 17 long weeks, physically and mentally, and you want to be as fresh as you possibly can be. And then on the other end of it, you want to be able to be the best teachers you can be as well through the summer, of take this great information that we just got for 6 to 7 weeks of the sport of football, apply it to how we want to grow ourselves forward. So, whether it's out of whack, I think there's a balance, and again, I think it's responsibility to each coach and every program. That everybody's got their own philosophy, but at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to give your kids what they need and give them the best pathway to become their best. So, good question.
Hey, Matt, you mentioned Deshaun is somebody that was, dinged up out a little bit. How have some of the younger guys, maybe like Gabe, Andrew, Jack, kind of used some of those reps, and where have you seen maybe some growth and experience there?
Yeah, boy, I would tell you the tight end spot, from day one till, at least where we are, has been as impressive as any group. I think Gabe Burkle has been a wow player at times through spring practice. He's kind of cut out of the Dylan Sainer mode of, a 270-pound strong, C-gap blocker who's also got the ability to flex out and be able to run. I think what you've seen in terms of, even Jack is a big, long athlete that can run, and, he's just got the ability to kind of move. I think Keller is a guy that, if there's probably one guy that's made the most growth from where he was at the end of the season, and I'm talking physical growth, I think he's put on 22 pounds since, the last game in the fall to where he started spring practice, and he's been able to maintain that weight. I think Andrew's kind of like that natural pass catcher out in space and can do a lot of different things. And obviously you throw him with Steve-O, and you throw him with Easton, and you throw him with Deshaun. Yeah, I think you're really excited about that group. Tyler Moore's been injured, so Tyler's been out. He tweaked his hamstring, so he's kind of been, in and out at times through the spring. But man, those other guys, they've been pretty special through spring practice. And obviously, when we're at our best, that group is really functioning at a high level, and we'll need that group to continue to develop and be really good for us.